Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of the Wandering Road podcast. I'm your host, Chris, and unfortunately, Dean can't join us today because he had to step away for a personal issue. He may be stepping in if he's done early later on in the show. We're not sure yet. Joining us for today's show are Shane and Alex from S.A.W Paranormal. And they're here today to share their paranormal experiences, talk a little bit about their paranormal investigations, and wherever the rabbit hole takes us. But before we get started with today's show, if you guys would like to be a guest on the show or share your stories with us, please reach out to us at our email address, twroadpodcast@gmail.com. We would love to have you on as a guest on the show. Or if you'd like to share your stories with us, we'll dedicate an episode to your story. Again, that email address is twroadpodcast@gmail.com. And with that, we'll start today's show. How are we doing tonight, guys?
Fantastic.
Real good. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. Let's just jump right into it. Tell us what S.A.W Paranormal is and how did you get started with that?
Well, how do we start this?
So it's kind of funny because I've always been drawn. We kind of like started off on our own and came together really. I had been studying demonology since I was a young teenager. So I've been studying demonology for a real long time. I've been a psychic medium for like 9 going on 10 years. The demonology thing is 11 going on 12 years. And then we met on a paranormal investigation, but he's always had an interest in the paranormal himself, his own experiences, and then he's like the tech person and he knows how to.
Most of it came from just me watching Ghost Adventures on my grandma's couch every weekend, basically. And then, I don't know, liking cameras and technology and all that. And I guess kind of one day, me and my friends decided to go to this one haunted location nearby in like January and damn near a blizzard for some reason. And after that, we went back there again. She tagged along, and that's how we met.
Yeah, his friends invited. They were like, "Well, you're a psychic medium, so why don't you come along?" And I was like, "You guys are gonna get activity if you bring me. I'm telling you, spirits want to chat." And they had already caught a face there. Shane really knew how to investigate, I want to say. So yeah, once we caught our evidence at Pigman's Road that night, his friends weren't too serious about it.
Not at all. They were.
We're doing it for a little bit of fun.
They won't listen to us. They're stupid.
And then they'll be like pulling pranks on you and leaving shit on your car. No.
Yeah.
So you mentioned the magic word for me there, Shane. Ghost Adventures.
Yes.
I love that show. Like back in 2009, 2010, and 11, where they would actually go to like really creepy places, and it was just the three of them. I think now they have this entire freaking crew that goes with them.
Stay in California, go to these
Random
boring
people.
locations. Zach Bagans is always getting touched by something,
or getting pushed into a wall, and he's like, "Oh my gosh, I'm so dizzy."
I think he just wants to kill his coworkers with an excuse. I think that's all it is.
And that everything's demonic too, like coming from an actual demonologist. And I mean, like, I don't know. I mean, I know someone who's really well known for demonology that recorded with Zach and said that despite all of it, he's really fun to film with. Like, it was actually a very pleasant experience for him. So I don't know. I just don't like the over dramatization, but yeah, it's very different than what it was back then.
Yeah, back then it was really scary, and we were talking offline for a little bit to the three of us to get to know each other a little bit, and we both agreed that when he went to Poveglia, that was probably one of the creepiest episodes they could have done, because that was a place I think where they were burning bodies during the Black Death. I couldn't imagine what it would be like to go there like that. And even for yourself, Alex, given that you're a psychic and you could actually see?
Honestly, even I couldn't imagine, because just going to the Conjuring house, I have never gotten so physically ill from negative energy. Like, Shane's never seen me that way. Like, I literally was fainting and he caught me. If he didn't catch me going down those stairs, I would have cracked my head open. So if I went somewhere like that, I feel like I would be so physically ill. It'd be a cool experience, though. I'd still go for it. I'd
Yeah.
be like, hell yeah.
I would like to go to a place like that, but I always have this, I don't want to say irrational fear, but I just have an innate fear of attachment because I lived in a home where there was something attached to that home that's still there to this day. And when you move into something like that space, like it lets you know that, hey, I don't fucking want you here.
Oh yeah. I don't know if you actually how long you had been on my lives for, but I usually try to I actually grew up in a demonically infested house too, so that sounds very familiar. It had a failed exorcism at one point. Like, the exorcism did not work. It is still infested to this day. My parents still live there, and I mean, transient
Why? Why don't they leave?
money.
Oh, yeah.
Money is tight, and they're going currently trying to go through a civil divorce, and trying to afford to live on your own right now in this area is like next to impossible. Like, you better be selling a limb on the side of the road, or every extra organ you got. Like,
Yeah, I feel like everywhere right now is just like overinflated. Like even where I'm located, it used to be fairly on the cheap end, and now it's just what the hell happened? But Shane, I want to come to you first and ask you what was your first paranormal experience, or what got you into the paranormal?
I think what got me into it was the first time, like, actually got into it was me and my friends going to Pigman's Road. I mean, like I said, I grew up watching Ghost Adventures. It always fascinated me and scared the shit out of me as a kid.
I want to say too, they went several times before I went with them, and the evidence they started to capture before I even went, like that face.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that face was probably first solid piece we got.
He caught like a solid face up on this bridge, and it's like pure nighttime. Like, there is no reason a face with eyes and a nose that
And a mouth.
vividly and a mouth. Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's like
It kind of looked like the I almost said Mike Myers. Jesus,
Jason.
Michael Myers mask.
Right? Oh yeah.
Jason's the hockey mask.
So it was just a face. Like there
Just
was
a face.
nothing. Oh,
Nothing
jeez.
else.
Nothing else.
That's fucking creepy.
Yeah. So when I
Yeah.
got home and looked over that footage and I saw the picture, I think a little poop came out. I don't know.
Yeah.
But no, yeah, that definitely got me into investigating. And then, like, we only had a camera, a flashlight, and a speaker that we just played white noise through.
Yeah, you guys didn't
We
go
didn't have
on
anything.
much.
And then my coworkers, they heard I did that, and they bought me a bunch of, like, a spirit box.
Well, they heard you were crushing on me, and they came to me and they were like, "What do we get Shane for a gift?" And I was like, "Ghost hunting equipment."
Yeah, so that's what kicked it off was my.
But we had never
old
met, and
coworkers.
like, we really hadn't hung out in person or anything, which is so funny. Like, it was just
Yeah.
Yeah, so you're lucky in the sense that your first paranormal experience was just that picture. Like you never had anything else happen to you when you were
Not
younger
that I
that
think of specifically.
Oh yeah, you can. So
Can
I
I?
know you said you were scared of
Wait,
attachment.
pause. I have bad memory, just so you know.
Yeah,
it's all good.
that's why he's got me here.
Yeah.
Yeah, my caretaker.
Your team. You got to
You
pick
know.
each other up.
Exactly. So the night we met at Pigman's Road in person and did that investigation, he came home with an attachment, and we started to hang out very regularly after that. So this thing was on him for like, and I was cleansing people in homes before Shane and I had met. Like, I was helping people and studying demonology and um, going into looking into how to do exorcisms and all that prior to. But he wasn't telling me. He wasn't eating. He wasn't sleeping. He was getting scratches, seeing shadow figures up at his. I mean, your grandma's is haunted too, but like, he wasn't. He was, and you were getting very irrationally angry anytime I lit cleansing tools or went to do any sort of like smoke cleanse or any type of cleansing. You would get irrationally
It
angry.
lasted about like what, a week, was it? It was a week.
A week or yeah, and then I cleansed you and removed it, and you were fine.
Yeah.
So what was it, Alex? Was it just like a angry spirit, or was it a demonic type of entity?
It was negative, that's for sure. It was nothing good. Shane had provoked. Shane challenged something that night, and I told him that he was going to regret. On top of the bridge, we actually have the video that we posted to Saw as our first video, and he's on top of the bridge. And what did you say? Hey, demons, it's me, your boy Shane.
I was doing so much shit talking.
And I
It's one of
literally
the first
said,
times I investigated. I'm gonna be like,
Too much Zach Bagans.
come on, you little pussy.
Too much Zach Bagans. He always does that thing. If there's something here right now, I want you to punch me.
Yeah, basically that's what was happening. No, that video, you hear me just talking mad shit.
like bash, and I literally, and you hear me in the video whisper, I'm like, there is a very angry male spirit there, and there is something very negative around us, and you are pissing it off. You gotta stop. And he was like, "Oh, use me as your vessel." And
I am your vessel.
Yeah, and the second he said that, he started saying, "I'm having a really bad panic attack. I'm like freaking out. I don't know what's going on." Like the equipment started to act up.
No, there was something I said, and as soon as I said it, the speaker shuts off.
Yeah.
Which freaked me out. Freaked Austin out. No, freaked Steve out. I'm not gonna
freaked out all of you. Names.
Yeah.
Even my cat came over and was like, "What? Why the hell did you do that for?"
I was shocked, I guess, when I called out that it actually did something, but that's not me.
Right.
So, from your perspective, Shane, that whole ordeal that you went through, do you recall much of it, or was it kind of a blur?
I would say my memory is pretty bad. I would say it was relatively normal, other than me not eating or sleeping. Because I'm a pig. I like to, I'll down a whole DiGiorno or whatnot.
He can
I love
eat.
eating. I can pack away.
Well, and then you were coming over, and I was seeing scratches and threes on the back of your neck, and you were like, "Oh, I didn't." And he like gets red if he even touches himself easy, and I was like, "Dude, did you scratch yourself?" And he's like, "No, I didn't touch my." Like, and it looked unusual too. I was like, it looked like animal claws or something. I was like, okay, we're gonna cleanse. So,
if I may, Alex, how did you cleanse him?
I sensed out what herbs I needed. Depending on what entity I'm dealing with, I'll figure out what herbs I need to use. I use a blend of herbs for exorcism, right? Which I should say, like I said, I was studying demonology, exorcism, not just demonology. I was looking into how to do exorcism and being taught how to do them shamanically. So we did like rites and stuff to do that. So I kind of was just feeling out what herbs I needed to use, and I kind of just smoked it away. I was like, fuck out of here. It was definitely, I don't know, it didn't take that much effort to get rid of. Like, attachments are truly, a lot of people won't tell you, but people usually get rid of attachments on their own. And in some cases, you don't know that they're there, and then you do need them removed. When it's a real issue is when if it's something powerful enough to infest your home, infest your life, and take it further and further.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And it reminds me of when I was still living in that haunted house that I pretty much grew up in. So this happened to my mom. My mom is Catholic. So a couple months, I think it was probably maybe 6 to 8 weeks before we moved out of the house. My mom like had incense, and she had that little lantern thing that they use in the Catholic churches. So she was going around every room. So we lived in a duplex, and my family lived upstairs. So my mom goes around saying a prayer through every room. She gets to a particular room, and she starts, burning the incense and saying a prayer, and she feels like something's choking her. And then that night, she told me the next day that night she dreamt of an old lady, that she was in her room, and some old lady came through the doorway and started yelling at her like, "You're trying to kick me out of my own fucking house. I'm gonna fucking kill you and your whole fucking family." And my mom said in her dream she like grabbed her by the neck and pinned her against the wall, and it's like, "You're not gonna fucking kill anybody." And then it like shape shifted itself to a little kid. I guess like one of my other relatives showed up in the dream and said, "Just let it go. They're not going to do anything, yada yada." And that was kind of the gist of it. In your opinion, Alex, since like you're a psychic, what do you make of something like that? Like if somebody came to you and said, "Alex, I had this type of dream. I don't know what it is." Like in your opinion, what do you think it is?
So as a psychic medium, without going into it as an investigator or a demonologist or anything like that, just getting my senses looking at that, I would definitely say that that's some type of psychic attack, like through the astral realm. Um, and honestly, that could be one of two different spirits, really. But it's the shape shifting thing. Um, a lot of demonic entities will do that, and the choking thing is actually really common when you're trying, like, when something doesn't want you, you're saying something or speaking something into existence that they don't want you to have power over. Immediately, I don't think it's an old lady.
I don't think so either.
But as you were saying that too, though, I was really getting this sense of like I was seeing like a really big wooden oval table with a chandelier with like glass pieces on the chandelier, like near the bulbs or whatever, and it felt like the room was spinning. And that's like my sign for like a portal yet again. Like it feels like there's just so many different energies going on that it's like it's yeah, as a psychic medium, I kind of get like more than one energy off of it. Even though there was one spirit in her dream shape shifting, it feels like there was a lot more going on there.
Right. Yeah, I thought the same thing. And I promise I'll get back to you, but I wanted to share one more story.
Okay.
Because it's like super intriguing because I've never talked to someone that's a psychic medium before, so I have so many questions.
Oh, you're
But
totally fine.
so last March, my sister went to stay in New York for a few months, and for some reason, her and my two cousins thought it would be a good idea to walk down the street near that house again. She told me that as they're walking past the house, they got halfway past the gate, like the fence, and all three of them simultaneously got these sharp headaches to the point where they had to cross the street, and it didn't stop until they got to the other block. It's just insane. What's really crazy is I interviewed my cousin who would come over frequently, and she like does like tarot cards, she gets downloads, she can see things as well. And she told me about like her experiences in that house, and I kid you not, my cousin that had no idea I was recording that show with her texted me and said, first he called me and I asshole buttoned him because I was in a recording. And then he texted me, "Guess where I'm parked in front of right now?" And he sends a selfie of him in his car in front of that house while she's actually telling her story of that place. So it's just so crazy and
Because when you
wild.
talk about it, you give it recognition, and it probably drew him right to there. Like it probably, you know what I mean. It's wild how things like that work too. I don't even believe in coincidence. I know
Yeah.
you're like,
No, I came prepared. Nah,
you're good, you're good. Don't worry, don't worry.
I got like holy water and yeah, I'm really paranoid about that stuff because I do think that yeah, you bring up a good point. When you do talk about this stuff, I think it's important to talk about this stuff for people to talk about their experiences because too many times we get labeled as crazy or you're making it up. And it's like, I bring this up all the time. Like, whenever I go on a platform and I share my experiences, I tell them, please debunk me because I'd rather have a scientific explanation of what happened as opposed to a preternatural being hating my guts because I'm Catholic and I'm a human being.
And you know the thing is too, and that's the thing I think what makes us a good team too. I'm very, very spiritual, and he's really good at debunking. So making sure and debunking and all that is super, super huge. Like, but the thing is with science too, a lot of science just proves the paranormal more and more nowadays. There's a lot more starting, and I think it's so important to talk about all of it because yeah, it's enlightening others, and there's such a big percentage of people experiencing paranormal activity in their home and paranormal phenomena that they're not talking about because they're going to be seen as crazy. And that's why there's so many today saying that stuff isn't real, yada yada. There's not enough of it being talked about.
Yeah, I completely agree. And even going on some of your lives, I see some people say like the most heinous shit, like accusing you of being a liar and you're just making this stuff up. You bring up a good point, Alex. It's really important for us to talk about this stuff because even with my own friends and family, when I would tell them about this stuff, because for the longest time as a teen, I was an atheist because, like my family members were religious and they try to, push religion on you. And me being the rebellious kid, I'm like, you know what? I am a historian as well, so I end up asking the question, well, why did this happen? Why did the Holocaust happen? Why did this happen? Why didn't God come in and, stop all of this crazy shit from happening? And then I have all those experiences that I can't explain. And it's like, okay, there's my epiphany moment that, there's something more to this. And even with people that are believers, whether they're Christian, Catholic, Muslims, Wicca, whatever, you'll always have your group of people that'll say, well, yeah, I believe in this, but I don't think ghosts are real. I don't think demons are real. It's something that drives me crazy. So I think that's why it's important to
And
talk about stuff like that.
and I never try to be, and I try to make examples, and I know people on my lives will be like, you're defensive, and I'm like, no, I make a point. Because if your grandma passes away, you think she's just gone, like, and when science says that when a human physical body dies, there's something right under an ounce of weight that leaves the physical body. Why is that? Because the soul isn't attached to the body. The soul, like, that is a physical shell. So that, to not believe in ghosts, you're saying you don't believe that there's another place for your loved ones that they're going. And it's not even about the comfort part of that, but it's truly about that. And it sucks that there are fraud mediums out there, but then I always stick up for that stuff too. I always do, because talking to people's loved ones and being able to relay messages, you quote Teresa Caputo here, you can't make that shit up. You just can't, because I scare myself sometimes. I'm like, shit, I don't know how I know this.
Right.
And so I always stick up and say, listen, your loved ones are there. They're always going to be. You best believe it. But I think another reason why so many people think we're crazy, this and that, they're like, if this is real, this will happen right now. Like they kind of narrow down what can happen if they're saying this is all you can do, when it takes so much energy for a spirit to be able to manifest. And going into science, it literally takes I can't even think of the word right now.
What are you talking about?
Energy, electricity.
Electromagnetic
Heck.
energy mixed with basically siphoning your aura and heat from the room, which is why the temperature will physically drop when there is a spirit in the room. They're taking the heat source mixed with the electromagnetic energy that they produce, and a little bit of your aura, which your aura and your own energy, that's real. Bioluminescence comes off of a human body, and your auras are linked down to your central nervous system, down your spine. So then for that to manifest, people don't understand that it takes time and energy for a spirit to manifest, or to even be able to knock, tap, to just physically manifest. That's a lot. So I think people will, they have perspectives that are blocking them from having more experiences too.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up, that people that try to will something or command something, like, oh, if God is real, let him strike me down right now with lightning. It's like, to be honest, to put it lightly, it's like, who the fuck are you to command something, whether it be God or a spirit or an angel or or a demon that has more power than you to command them like you control them. It's like, dude, that's not how that
No, you're
works.
challenged. You should never challenge. You should never challenge anything that's ever been inhuman, whether it is higher energy or a lower. You know.
Right. Yeah. And when you brought up the whole thing with it like siphoning heat for energy, is that why my feet are always cold?
I think that could have to do with
That might just be
medical.
iron deficiency, my man.
Yeah, I'm not gonna lie. I have really bad circulation that runs through my family, so I'm always. But like that type of thing where you walk into a room though, and I mean, like you can move your hand over here, and it's like, oh, this is cooler than even right here, and or the lights start to flicker, or it's like, oh, use my TV for energy, and your TV messes up like the way that they will manifest, and depending on how strong of a spirit or entity that you're dealing with or ghost is what
We've had that happen at a location we went to. We can say it, right, Van? Yeah, we'll say
Yeah.
Van Horn, where you said that there was like a little girl next to me,
Oh
and
yeah.
I had that thing where my hands and my feet are always cold, and I stuck my hand out, and my hand got like more colder. What's the vocabulary?
I,
A lot colder than what they originally were. It really freaked me out.
You said you felt tingling too.
Mm-hmm.
Well, because I literally said, I was like, Shane, don't freak out. There's a spirit of a little girl right next to you. She really likes you. He's really good with kids randomly. And
So I kicked her. No.
I told him, reach your hand out. And he was like, oh my fucking God, I feel tingling.
Yeah, that was definitely very, like, I can, like, again, cold hands all the time. If Alex is feeling a cold spot, I usually can't feel it because my hands are cold in general. That one time was very, very insane.
Prominent for you.
Yeah.
I could just picture it like Alex is like, there's a cold spot there, and there's a little girl in there. Shane sticking his hand out, and like you see, like from the ghost's perspective, it's like a hand just going right through its head.
Oh my God, the way I saw her out of the corner of my eye, though, she was very much there. I mean, like, I sensed her playing around and jumping, like, a little shy of us. And I'm a very strong personality, so I think she gravitated more to Shane because he's a little bit more taken back and shy as well. So, and he was holding the camera and not giving as much attention, so I think she just felt more comfortable approaching you.
Yeah.
Alex, I wanted to ask you because I asked Shane this in the beginning, but I think we're 30 minutes in and I'll finally ask you this question. So let's start from the beginning for you. How did this all start for you? How did you know you were a psychic medium? Like, what was your first paranormal experience? Now I'm fully intrigued.
So honestly, there was a lot of things that didn't make sense to me. Like, I didn't really know that I had abilities, but I had weird things going on. Like, I didn't know what I wanted to be. I always knew I would tell my teachers I want to make a difference, I want to help people, but like, I don't know, I would randomly pick out books that would be about psychic mediums, or like, what I mean, in 2005 in elementary, and I wasn't even good at reading. I was like a shitty little reader. I was terrible. Okay, I have no clue why I was picking out these books that I could not even read. And growing up in a house that was demonically infested, I would see shadow. I would wake up having shadow figures surrounding my bed, laughing at me. And my parents suffered from terrible addiction growing up too. That really drew in the negative energy that was on the premises. Um, So they thought I was crazy. They got me tested and like took me to a specialist, and they were like, I don't know, there's nothing wrong with her.
See, that's what I'm talking about.
Yes.
That they automatically go, oh gosh,
Yeah,
our
no.
kid's freaking senile.
Yeah, and they definitely thought so. That was only in elementary that they were sending me to get checked out. And they were like, she's compliant, there's nothing wrong, but from seeing shadow figures, there would be times, we only had one car at a time. We would have to go pick up my mom from work. We'd be driving, and there's this one stop sign where there's a cemetery, and I could have sworn there was like an old man or an old lady like hunched over crossing the road, and I was like, you gotta slow down, you're gonna go through this person. and they went right through them, but like nothing was there, and it confused the ever-loving hell out of me as a kid. And I started to tell my friends, I was like, I think I'm just crazy. I don't know. They were like, what are you talking about? In sixth grade, I'm going around telling people I'm crazy because I see people standing in the corners and like, I don't know. I thought I was like literally schizo, even though I tested normal. So once I started to get older and more people had experiences in my house, and I mean like my friends I would bring over. Um, so obviously after sixth grade, I was studying demonology, and my friends would come over and they started to have messed up experiences at my parents' house. I mean, the coffee maker starting, the hair dryer starting on its, people getting choked in the house, smelling like foul smells or getting like a cold presence right on top of them. Like just outrageous. Seeing shadow figures go right by the halls, like, or just pop up.
I'm kind of curious about the whole shadow people surrounding your bed. Was that a one-time thing or was that frequent? And what did the laugh sound like? Did it sound like ha ha ha? Like,
It was deafening. It was, and that's actually a demonic MO when they're targeting you. They were really trying for transient possession with me. They were really, I was the main target, is what the exorcist ended up saying. I had been the main target all along. It sounded like deafening laughing. It just sounded like laughing surrounding my bed. I thought, like, being that young, I thought my stuffed animals, I was like, Mom, Dad, my stuffed animals are yelling at me. They're laughing at me. And I didn't know what to make of it. Um, and I would, not just that, I would have bruises going up my thighs, or I at one point woke up to something grabbing my shoulder and it said my name into my ear and then something in a different language. Um, I was hallucinating bugs crawling all over the walls and the bed. As soon as I turn the light on, they're gone. That's demonic MO. They're stunned by the light. So I had so many experiences, but psychiatrists, this that ruled out anything mentally that could be causing that. And so,
yeah, if you're comfortable with sharing, why don't you go into a little bit more of some of your experiences that you had in that house? Because you said infested. And when I think of an infestation, I think of like, when you have like a termite infestation or a cockroach infestation, it's like hundreds and hundreds of them.
yeah. Um, so it wasn't hundreds and hundreds, but there was a portal in my parents' home.
But yeah, Alex, before we get into, the whole demonic infestation type of stuff and maybe talking about some more of your experiences in that house and possibly what your parents went through, just wanted to say that Dean is back and he's joined us.
Wow, that was like 5 clicks to get the thing unmuted. I'm actually sick, so I apologize. I don't know if I probably sound nasally, but I think I picked something up on the way back from Mexico. Hopefully, it's not COVID. But hilariously enough, all of our COVID tests are expired, and I didn't realize that till today, so I don't have any way of knowing that. Yeah, but I'm fine. I had COVID once before and it knocked me on my ass, and this one feels like, knock on wood, it's not as bad. So hopefully I'll get over it in a couple of days. But yeah, man, other than that, I've been listening in. I was driving back from a meeting, and I listened in for about 30 or 40 minutes. You guys have been going for a long time. I appreciate your time. I know it's late over there. So like, feel free, if we're going too long, just let me know. But other than that, it's been a great conversation. I definitely have some questions queued up that should churn the conversation more. Just let me know when you run out of fodder, Chris.
Oh, absolutely. So, Alex, if you want to talk a little bit more about, well, for the listeners that may not know what demonic infestation is, if you want to define that and then talk a little bit more about that house, the experiences you had there.
So, demonic infestation, it doesn't necessarily mean hundreds of spirits, but it can definitely mean multiples and multiples, because having a portal at any location, which is really like a tear in our realm into another dimension, which sounds insane, but that, you know, it really does sound insane until you have all these weird experiences and do research and all these other things to add into it. Um, but having a portal, that kind of is like a flag down for spirits that, like, you're just driving by and you see like a sign saying detour, like you could take that way if you want to, they don't have a sense of time where they are, in other realms and whatnot. So for as long as our protections or whatever hold up too. Being in a demonically infested home, it was kind of just having different entities in and out. I think there was one in specific that may be also a generational curse, may have something to do with my father's side of the family, but we mainly think that it is a mix of having a portal. There's a lot of history in this area and on my parents' street specifically, having to do with being on a possible battleground and Native Americans being massacred on the land. Um, and then the addiction and a lot of negativity happening in that household. It really just stirred the pot for like a perfect demonic recipe. And yeah, you were dealing with different activity every day, and the different entities would really give you a different run for your money, if you could say, every time.
So were there ever instances you're just like making a sandwich and something would just like knock some shit over in the kitchen? Like stuff like that type of stuff happening?
Yeah, honestly, there's definitely, and I can't, if I could think of a specific one with that, there's literally been so many times where you're just standing there. I mean, we've literally, there was a time where glass just fell over from the counter. My parents chalked that up too. They were like, "Oh, it was the wind and the counter, like the curtain knocked it over." It was like nowhere near that even, but I mean, it was a lot of times it's like you could feel something behind you, or you could hear something in the hallway a few feet behind you. Um, or for example, Shane and I, the one time we were hanging out in my room we were painting rocks. We were like, we were doing like creepy Halloween paintings and whatnot, and my dog got excited. He heard my mom come in the house.
With like bags of groceries or
Yeah,
something.
bags of groceries, like as if she was breaking up ice to put in the freezer, like she usually would do. And I was like, "Oh, let's go say hi to my mom real quick and see if she needs help or something." Like we all, like me, him, my dog, was wagging his tail, thinking this was my mother. Um, and we got out there, and nobody was there. Nobody was home. that was that happened frequently, or where I would hear footsteps in the attic. Nobody goes up in that damn attic.
Yeah. It was also
Nobody.
the first time I went to your house too, where I saw this like solid black mass like move behind your mom and go into the bathroom while she was talking to us in the doorway of your bedroom. That was spooky too.
Probably went into the other room,
Yeah.
honestly, because that's really where it like lingers. It really lingered in my bedroom growing up. Like the places where people didn't want to be is where it lingered the most.
So do you think it mainly came to you because it knew very quickly that you could see them?
I think part of it is when you can see them or you're enlightening people about them. And I was studying demonology at the time. That's a threat. They don't want you to go around telling people, or they don't want anybody to know what's going on. So they want to be able to get away with what they're trying, their end goal is. The other thing is being a younger teenager, you're very highly emotional, and I was the youngest one in the house. It's easiest to pick on me. It was getting the most out of me, picking me and targeting me. I wasn't the only target, but the exorcist we had brought onto the scene actually thought that I was the main target, and then it was my mom. It seemed like it was out for women. This thing really didn't like the women. Um, it attacked my mom a few times.
Like
Um,
physically or mentally? Wow.
physically. She would like, and she didn't even believe we had. What happened was, at the time, my brother had this girlfriend that we were all chill with, and she came over waiting for my brother to get out of work, and I was like, let's watch a movie, let's go in my room and we'll paint, because everyone else in the house had an addiction at the time, so we're just trying to wait there in the room and keep to ourselves, really, because we were waiting to get an apartment. It was so odd though. We start the movie, we start painting. That like whirlwind of a feeling is going on in the room. This girl doesn't have her phone anywhere near her. It's charging in my brother's room. My phone is away from me charging. It's plugged into the wall. I start getting like messages from her phone, and I'm like, "Is your phone even on you, Avery?" And she's like, "No." And I look at it, and I'm getting gifts. like those like moving image things, and one of them says, "You're tacky and I hate you." And then I got another gif showing a genie coming out of the bottle, which if you study demonology, that's a jinn. Which I actually do have like Indian somehow tied into my father's side as well, which is why I started to make the assumption, make connections that it could be that specific entity attacking us that time was possibly linked to my father.
Oh wow.
So then I started getting like some really weird typing coming in from her phone. I put the phone down at this point. She's calling up her mother, who is also a psychic medium. Me and her would bounce off of each other, and she's like, "I'm gonna call my exorcist. I'm gonna call, his name was Fred." Um, and she's telling me, she's like yelling prayers over the phone that I don't know to say at the time. And I'm doing cleansing and trying to open the window and get it out. As I'm cleansing, the whole stick of sage lit on fire and smoked up the whole room. None of the smoke was leaving through the window. It was so weird how the window was open, but the room continued to become thicker and thicker with that smoke. We could not breathe. We had to leave. She ended up getting jabbed and she had red marks in her side. And after that, having to tell my mother what was going on, she would be laying down. She had her bra her bra strap like snapped to her back. She was assaulted in the shower. Yeah, there is quite a few things. The chandelier was swaying above my brother's head right in front of me, and he didn't notice. It was like he was in a bubble, like he couldn't hear anything going on around him. And me and my mom are like, "Oh my god, if that thing falls off the ceiling, it's gonna kill him." And as soon as he walked out of the room, it came to a pin stop. We got a hotel room that night.
Yeah, I don't blame you for doing that. But Dean, do you have any comments or questions that you want to jump in with? Because I've been talking to them for a while. Don't want to steal the whole show.
You've been doing a great job, man. I actually, I definitely have some questions, and they're more aimed towards like. So when I ask questions about this sort of thing, I'm always curious to get a perspective about what the person thinks is generating these things or what's making them work. And the first question I'll ask is like, as a psychic medium, what is your assessment, or like where do you see the if sorry if you said this already, but where does this capability come from? Is it bestowed upon us at like a younger age, or does it kind of come to us? Is it chosen later in life? Is it something that we purely manifest, like you were studying demonology? Is something you just get stronger at? Like how does that work, and how do you get stronger? Is it through knowledge and such? Does that make sense?
Oh yeah, definitely. I think for one, knowledge is power in the paranormal and spiritual. As a psychic medium, I do believe a lot of people have I don't know if we all have the same abilities, but I believe we all have a sixth sense, if you will. That it really depends on you tapping into it. It depends on your information given at the time and your consciousness, because not everybody is truly interested in seeing what they're capable of, because the educational system teaches us limits our whole life. So from a young age, we're really taught things that we can and can't do, and I think that shuts us off immediately. As opposed to if we were more open, I think people would be. And I also have students that I certify as psychic mediums. So I've watched people go from not being able to tap into anything. Not everyone can be a medium. Not all of my students have become a medium. Most of them have. Some of them just stay more psychic, which is tapping into past, present, and future. The medium is more psychic and being able to communicate with people that are no longer physically here. So I think everyone's capable of it. It's just it depends on them, and it depends on how open and consciousness and information given at the time.
Yeah, I'm always fascinated by this idea that like you said earlier, there's becoming more and more of a nexus in terms of science and spirituality, and there's like studies being done. Like I forget the name of it, but there was a case study done I don't think long ago where they tried to, they got like 100 patients or something, I'm making up a number, like 100 patients who were on their deathbed. They agreed to do this, and they would try to bring them back or something. I forget how it worked exactly, but they would put a piece of paper like towards the top of the room, and the only way that someone could read that paper is if they were elevated above the body and like an out of body experience. And I don't know, I can't remember the end result of that study, but I do know that that was scientifically vetted and funded in a legitimate way. So there you go. There's your indication that people are taking this more seriously, because there seems like there's something to it. And when I was driving home, I actually had something weird happen to me. And so I don't really have interactions or instances or stuff like that with the paranormal side too much. I do have a couple weird stories, but like mostly the things that happen to me in my life are weird coincidences that come from perception, like catching patterns or things that repeat or things that just seem to happen. And a perfect example, and again, I don't know if this is paranormal or maybe it's just ultra perception, but like so when I was driving to my appointment on one side of the highway, um, I just instinctively looked to the other side of the highway in the opposite direction, and I saw this like little sports car. And there was a very clear figure of a woman with long hair, and I think she was older, but like she looked very different than other people, and she also was driving a very different car. So that's probably why I got drawn to that out of the corner of my eye. But the strangest thing was, I passed her again an hour and a half later, and I did the same thing when I was driving. I was looking straight ahead, paying attention to traffic, and I just instinctively looked over to my the other side of the highway and landed right on that car. And unless I have like ultra perception out of the corner of my eye that I'm not aware of, like that seems really weird. So when you say things like coincidence, and Chris, you were actually talking about this earlier, like your was it, sorry, your cousin, right, was the one who texted you? Yeah. So
Yeah, that we were I was recording with my one cousin. No one knew I was recording her, and we were talking about that house that we all grew up in that was haunted, supposedly. I always throw in supposedly. You gotta throw some breadcrumbs to the skeptics. And my other cousin that lives across the street, he calls me, I don't answer, he sends me a picture with him, a selfie with him in the car with that house in the
yeah,
background.
that's so crazy. And the craziest thing about that story, and I don't know if a lot of people would think about this aspect, but if you think about the trajectory in reality that would need to happen for that to go, because it's like, it's always funny, people say like, oh, I'm gonna pray for something to happen. Okay, that's great. But if you're going to pray for $1 million to suddenly drop in your lap, you better expect that there has to be some kind of A to B to C logic that's going to happen to get that to you. And that's the same thing with your cousin. It's like, it's very strange in the timing, but he would have had to have been driving to that location, presumably before you even started the show. So, but then you can also think like you were going to talk about that anyway, because you had that show lined up. You knew what you're going to talk about. So the craziest thing to me isn't necessarily the text and the photo. It's that they came to a head right when your sister was talking about it, and he would have taken time to progress to that location. So just like talking about that scientifically, like what are your experiences on your end? Like, have you had similar cases where paranormal coincidences or weird things happen, and what's your perspective on that?
So we were going to this haunted road. It's in Angola, New York. And the same day, you got a random phone call. I often remember this happening, but it was an area code in Angola that
Oh
same
yeah.
day.
Yeah.
Like as we were getting ready to go, stuff like that.
And I always say too, like how you were saying, you want $1 million or you pray for. I always say like we can manifest and we can whatever, but we have to meet it halfway, like everything. And it's the same thing with like having these experiences, like because we're meeting it halfway and we're open to it. These spirits will meet us halfway. The universe meets us halfway right again and shows us these weird, like yeah, how we were getting ready for Pigman's Road, which is in Angola, and then I'm getting a call from Angola. And I don't even think it was like anybody on the line. I don't think anything came from that phone call.
Yeah, that's super interesting. I would
Um,
love to. I mean, you don't have to do this, but if I was in that situation, I would definitely Google the crap out of that phone number. Maybe even like pay for a service to trace it, because that is pretty creepy and strange.
I know, honestly, I wish I would have paid attention to it more because I think we were definitely creeped out by it, but I don't think
I think we did Google it, and that's how we found out it came from
Oh,
Angola.
that makes sense.
yeah,
Yeah.
because it was like a weird number. So
35, whatever number.
it was something really, it was very odd. I mean, coincidences like that happen so regularly for me. I can't even think of like exact ones, but that one is actually a really
Mhm.
That
really good
yeah.
one, honestly.
Um that's, yeah, that's so crazy to think about that you've had multiple experiences like that yourself directly. And Chris, unless you had another question, there was something else that popped in my head that I was curious about that I wanted to get your perspectives on. So I'll just tell you a quick story on my end. I told you, like, I tend to be more perceptive. I've always been like that in my life, and like kind of like reflecting way too much. I know I do it way too much. I try to pull it back, especially like my wife is like, you need to reel it back with the conversation. So I'm like, okay. I was doing that last night. I was like going off on a tangent about, I was watching Neil deGrasse Tyson on like one of his channels or something, and he was like talking about reality and probability and multiverse, and I'm just like spewing all this crap out of my mouth as my wife's just like, what are you? Oh my god! It's just
I get the
you
same
really.
treatment.
That's why
And
we're
real
friends,
quick,
man.
dude. Real quick, dude. With Neil deGrasse Tyson and the whole science thing, unfortunately, we've lost contact with
I know. I
Voyager.
saw that. Here's another crazy coincidence.
Yeah,
On the plane, I just watched a documentary about the Voyager space program and how there was like a small team still running it, and that's so crazy that it just shut off. But I think the other one is still going, which is hopeful. But yeah, sorry to go science nerd on everybody.
No, you're okay. I think it's good. I think science is needed for this stuff,
Yeah.
honestly. I want to do brain scans while I'm doing
Oh,
a reading so
yeah.
bad. I'm like, I want to find a university that'll like do
That'd
it
be
for
really
me.
cool. Yeah. Have they done something like that for people? Have you come across? They have. Okay. What have been the findings?
I study a lot of. So, oh my gosh, it's really cool. Honestly, so what's wild is the frontal lobe, um, and a few other parts of the brain, mainly up front, that control your own emotions, your feelings, your perception of things, almost completely shut down. Like those functions shut down almost completely when somebody is channeling and communicating with the other side. Like you're not intact with your own thoughts. It's wild. For Tyler Henry specifically, they found that he went into a dream state while he was fully awake and channeling. I want to do it so bad. I'm like, hook me up. Like, just don't put me in with needles or nothing. Just put me in one of those like helmets with the gel in it.
Yeah.
Whatever,
Yeah.
like the Professor X like type of helmet. Like
Yeah,
just
yeah,
put that on you. Real quick, guys. You want to hear something creepy?
yes.
The
Did you
entire
just
time,
experience something?
the entire time we were like you were talking with Dean and he was asking these analytical scientific questions, your video and audio did not freeze or stutter once. When you were talking about your experiences and Shane was in the beginning, your video and your audio was freezing and stuttering.
Ultra
So
perception and concentration,
the
man.
the
That's the power of concentration.
yeah, that it's crazy, dude, because the last person that we spoke to, his network just he started talking about like his demonic experience or whatever, because he's a demonologist too.
Mm-hmm.
And like his network
Yeah,
just
we lost half the
dropped.
show.
And I'm texting Dean. I'm like, dude, like we lost everything. So we had to start all over again.
That's
And the
another thing
and
that
the
happened.
entire time he's talking, like I'm actually editing his show like right now. Like I was editing it just today. My track is fine. Dean's track is fine. His has nothing but like as he's talking, you hear like static disturbances under it.
Garble Latin.
And when we weren't talking about his experiences, his audio was fine. But as soon as he starts talking about that stuff, it's like, is it his network? Like, am I losing my freaking mind here? Like, is there something
Yeah.
more at play? I thought I always chalk it up to okay, maybe it's his internet connection. I don't know,
It
but
may be both. It may be both. I will say I've noticed that your guys' stuff will get blurry and whatnot, but it doesn't like the audio isn't freezing. But that happens a lot with me when I'm enlightening people, when I'm teaching him demonology, when I'm anything like that, or when I have a phone like when there's a phone call. And I've had phone calls completely drop as soon as I mention. I've had like somebody's face completely shift during a phone call. Like really really odd stuff like that. I don't know what it is actually. Technology and me usually don't get along, but anytime it comes to giving a case or a spirit recognition that has darker energy, it will mess with technology. They do not want to be known.
I want to add a different or an alternate perspective that is always on my mind with this sort of thing, and it's terrifying to me. And this is really bad because like this is the most quintessential horror thing that is like straight out of Black Mirror that you could possibly imagine, which by the way is fascinating in and of itself that we live in this time. And if you go back even 100 years before the advent of like, say, the transistor or something, which is like the single most important advancement for technology and mankind in a lot of opinions, there was no concept of virtual reality. There was no concept of artificial intelligence, or they had like, maybe they had like, oh, the machine man or something, but other than that, there was no connection between the neurons and creating something that can generate movement or thought that is similar to a human being. So we are now in a stage of humanity where anybody could just toss in the possibility that this is virtual reality. Like this, you know, everything that is going on around us, the coincidences, the shifts, the weird things, it's like kind of the quote unquote, for lack of a better term, matrix thing. But I wondered, how has that fit into your paranormal calculation at all, about how, not necessarily like the virtual side, but like how maybe you can't always be sure who you're talking to is who you're talking to. It could be just some kind of giant supercomputer on the other end creating an image of someone who is related to that person. So maybe you really are getting, every single time you're getting some kind of direct connection to an image or something that is connected to, or related to that loved one. But maybe it's like, how do you know, or is it just faith that you think that it's the actual person you're talking to? And does that kind of like enter in your calculus? You have to be careful. It's kind of taking a step back from the scientific perspective. Even if you don't want to talk about that, you can say, you could also make,
Oh
you could
no,
also
yeah.
make the argument like, you know, it could be a demon. It could be, I think, you know, some more modern movies have used that. What's the Conjuring one that just came out? Not the Red Door, but a couple before that, I think. Or no, maybe it was the Nun. But they had that scene where they were doing that, and it turns out the demon of the house was like mimicking something beautiful and nice, and then it turned out that it was like an evil doctor or something who used to live there. So how careful do you have
Yes.
to be about that? And do you think about anything like that when you're going into it? How do you take that?
Absolutely, like 1,000%. I actually preach and teach discernment is huge. And as humans, we're not always going to be great with it, but I always preach and teach to my students, if you're not good at discerning with people, you're not going to be good at discerning with spirit, and you need to know your own energy better than the back of your hand. Like if you know you feel uncomfortable around a person, you need to take that feeling and take it into consideration when you go to a haunted environment. Are you feeling like you need to trust your own energy 110%? Now that's just off of intuition. As a medium, there are specific signs that I do look for to make sure that I am talking to the loved one. For one, when I talk, like how when I did the reading for Chris, I was sure to, one, I grounded myself and I connected specifically. I said his name. Anybody for Chris, please step forward, because I'm not. When you call out, you can be calling out to all the dead. There's dead people everywhere. History is everywhere you look. History is a haunting waiting to be told. So I call out specifically to the loved ones, and then I use my discernment and what I'm seeing. Um, but yeah, there's been times where I've been giving a reading and there's been something demonic tried to come through, and I had to stop the reading and remove the entity and then continue what I was doing. But I actually tell people it's so important to be careful, because even as a professional, you're you're still gonna get screwed over. You're still gonna get attacked. Like you have to be so careful. Like nobody's safe in this field, and an interest isn't enough to get into this. An interest isn't enough. Like you better be prepared. You're signing your life away if you get involved with a demonic entity. You never really know. They attack your heart. They attack your family members. I took a case that needed an exorcism. We performed an exorcism on this woman, and 5 minutes later, I got a call from my aunt saying she can't make it to dinner. Her dog is dying of cancer. Mind you, I took that client's call. The first time I took her call was actually at that aunt's house in July, months prior to.
Yeah, that's crazy.
So when I say people got to be careful, I mean like careful doesn't even cover it, because you're still gonna have run-ins, especially doing what we do, trying to help people.
Yeah.
They actually know us by name and have it out for us
So
now.
it's something you said that really fascinated me. Is, so I was thinking earlier in the conversation when I was just listening, I was going to ask him, like, I'm wondering out, like, to myself, like, why would you want to look at somebody and interact with them before you try to make contact? Because I wondered if that could cloud your perception or lead you down a certain way that might obfuscate or cloud, your true path towards reading. But then you just answered that question for me, because if you went in blind, not knowing much about the person you were trying to read, you have no way of discerning the thing or entity that you're trying to connect to. So it almost seems better to know a little bit about the person, vice going in.
Honestly, not
Oh, really?
necessarily.
Okay.
When it comes to, so I actually have very good, I put up words and energetic boundaries to make sure that negative energies don't come near me. But when it comes to doing a reading, I don't want to know a thing about you. And Facebook, I don't care if I could Google you on Facebook. Anything I pick up is not going to be on Facebook. I can guarantee that. But I never need to know anything about people. However, what's funny is that if I know the person going into the reading, they're more open with me, and I tend to get a lot more because you're not then holding yourself
Yeah.
back. But I have to use that discernment. I have to like constantly be on radar when I'm doing a reading, and I cleanse before and after.
Yeah, that's so interesting.
So like when I get off here, I'll probably be cleansing after doing the reading.
Dirty old man Chris. Oh man.
Right, right. You know, it's really interesting is that when you did that for me, which I really appreciate. I'm sorry, folks, the reading is not part of today's episode, so you'll deal with it. If you want a reading from Alex, you can contact her. But you brought up a couple of things that, in our conversation before the podcast, we chatted for about almost a half hour, and I didn't mention anything that you brought up in the reading, which I found really fascinating. And whatever you brought up was literally things that I think about like on a daily basis. It was really enlightening. To all the listeners out there, this stuff to me, this stuff, just talking to Alex was really enlightening because I've never spoken to a psychic medium before, and it gives you a lot of insight onto what they go through. And the entire time Alex has been sharing her story with us, this is an audio only podcast, so like we can see the expressions on her face. And when she's talking about what she went through when she was younger, she wasn't smiling or giggling like she was, bullshitting with us. It was legitimately, it's a little unsettling.
No,
And
I
that's how.
kid you not. There was a time and place where I looked at I looked my mother in the eyes and I said, the abusive relationship where that man almost killed me, I'd go through that 10 times over to not deal with that entity trying to kill me, because you can't defend yourself from something you cannot see that won't physically like you can't even defend yourself even if you can see it.
Right, like if you wanted to punch it, like you can't punch
Yeah,
it.
there ain't no punching a demon.
No, no, it could probably punch you. But I did have a question for you. You said that when you call out to, you're doing a reading and you call out to the other side. I'm a huge classics person. And when you said that, it reminds me of when Odysseus went to the underworld to find Tiresias. And he's looking for Tiresias, and he brought the goat with him, and he's like calling out to Tiresias, and everybody is just coming. Like everybody's just coming for him. So it reminded me of that. I kind of got that picture in my mind that like when you're calling out to someone, like everyone within like maybe like a 10-mile radius can hear you, and they're coming for you. But I do have a question for you, and I promise I'm not trying to be a smart ass. It's a question that's always pondered my mind. We talk about hauntings and ghosts and stuff like that, but why do we never see like the ghost of Julius Caesar, for example, or something like that? You know what I mean? We don't see like ghosts of like ancient, like if we go to the battlefield of the Teutoburg Forest, no one picks up like a Roman centurion like walking around. Why do you think that is?
Truthfully, I mean, I've picked up really century-old spirits before, but then also, again, I think we pick up the more recent spirits because I think the other spirits have more time in the realms to process. Because, okay, if you put it like this, when you pass away, you have unfinished business. There are things you never got to talk through, trauma that you never got to fully process. There are things you never got to do in life, and that all gets saved for the next lifetime. Those are all lessons that you're going to have to pick up and start and that's why sometimes we go through traumas at a younger age, because those are the traumas we went through at an older age in our past life. We're just picking back up again. So yeah, basically, like, to see spirit, I think these older spirits, like cavemen or stuff like that, I think they just have more time to really process what they've gone through to kind of like move forward. And it's not to say that they won't show themselves or anything. I think that they've just had more time to process what's happened and maybe have moved forward and started their new life and are not lingering
There is
anymore.
one case. There is
Right.
one
Yeah.
case that JJ mentioned though that I can't bring up off the top of my head. But remember that story about the was it the Japanese general, or he was a leader? He was
Yeah. Yeah.
decapitated, and
That
his head was brought back to the palace in Tokyo. And to this day, a lot of people still claim that where his head was is still haunted by his head only. So that is something.
if you try to build on the land where his head is, equipment breaks down, stuff like that, he basically, the story goes, like, he was betrayed by the emperor or the shogun, and he was beheaded as a result, and forevermore his head like haunts that specific area. And if, basically, the legend goes that if you build anything on there, that general will bring ruin upon Japan.
I like the other. I like the other side better, where it's like, not forevermore. It's like you're just learning a terrible lesson, but you're gonna get recycled into another life. I always said, like, why would you have to pay
Right.
for all eternity?
Yeah.
Like, why do you have to just stick around?
Yeah, but that would what yeah, but Alex, what you said would make sense, is why you don't see Julius Caesar's ghost walking around the old Pompeian theater where he was murdered by the conspirators how many thousands of years ago. And the reason I bring up Julius Caesar is because I'm a huge like Roman person, like I told you earlier, and he's like one of my favorite historical
Roman nerd.
characters. Well, figures. Yeah, hell yeah. Hell yeah. Saturnalia, it's coming up, dude, in 2 days. But but yeah, that makes sense. It's like, okay, you have like over 2500 years to process what happened to you, and if you haven't done that already, like, that's kind of a you problem. But
I will say there are some spirits, and put it this way, there are things that in times where earthbound spirits or people that die so tragically that they're angry, and they actually get to a point where they're like, really, why would God let this happen? Screw him, blah blah blah. And they're angry, and they actually want to just, it's just like a negative person, they want to instill that on other people. And sometimes that type of negativity, because they're like, screw God, blah blah, will actually attract a negative entity onto the scene with the earthbound. So then there can be so many different things, but there are times where I've seen spirits just not get over things and hold that grudge.
So sorry, man. Are spirits in your mind? Are they? And then I think we talked about this before, Chris, but I want to get their perspective. In your mind, are spirits like unilaterally, like individually operating entities that could think, feel, make actions, have free will or free thought, or is it like the culmination of just negative energy that is stuck in one way that it, for lack of a better term, like it's just messing with people or trying to interact with people in a negative way because that's its nature. And the reason I ask that is because if we're going to talk about like the progression of reality leading to recycling of souls and different experiences, do those entities who are angry that seem like a free will spirit, like demons or whatever, do they also have a chance to eventually migrate to like a better culmination of reality? Like, is that where we're all going as a consciousness, like we're going back to a center,
Oh,
or are they're just that it's like the dark matter, the light matter, and that's how it is?
truthfully, there's a lot more to it. For one, with demonic entities, they were never human, so that's completely separate from negative energies. Demonic and spirits are completely separate, even. And then there are ghosts. Ghosts are people that have passed away. Spirits can be really a general for all different kinds, if that makes sense, all different beings. Um, so it's not to say that some of them can't linger, and um there's such thing as that can go into like residual energy where there's no spirit but there's the echo in time. Like, it's replaying, like you're getting sounds of like cannons or something, like how we got the one time on my parents' street investigating the church, we were
Yeah.
hearing like the cannons. and that like confirms that there was a battle there. Like you'll get things like that, or then there's there are times where we went to a residential case, and we had a lot of activity. I did a whole cleansing. I did the 4 perimeters even of the property. They got activity the next day, and I'm like, okay, I'm gonna go back there. So I went back there, and instead of doing a cleansing this time, I did a crossing over, and I made it clear to the spirit that they had to leave, that their family is on the other side, that they don't reside there anymore. And I basically was like, they can't hear you the way I can, so knock on the wall when you go into the light. And you just heard a like behind the client. She got completely freaked out. They actually haven't experienced anything since. And that was a very negative spirit. He was very angry. He was slamming doors. They had a little kid that was terrified. Cooper's coughing in the mic. He has to get a say.
That's a perspective we welcome. You're absolutely right, Cooper. I couldn't have said it better myself. Dean, I got probably about maybe 3 questions left for Alex. Do you have anything else for Alex or
No,
Shane?
I think we held him long enough. So let's just wrap up with your last questions and we'll be good.
Yeah. So Alex and Shane, I wanted to get your perspective. Well, let's continue with the spiritual, and then I'll ask the last couple of questions. With regards to the afterlife, in your opinion, is there a heaven and hell, or is that just a figment made up by man to keep people in line with using religion?
I do believe that there's a lot of organized religion that goes into that. Like I believe in God, Jesus, Mama Mary, but I don't believe in the organized religion where everything you do is a sin and this and that. So I believe some of it may be fear tactic, but also I'm not fully sure. I do believe that there are places, but I don't know if they're necessary. I think it's more like a realm, just like how I would say. I think hell and heaven may be more of a realm, and possibly even a state of mind that somebody can drift into. I think it really depends, because what I've also noticed from taking multiple clients in residential cases is, depending on your specific religious background and your practices, what you believe in is what you can experience, which is why I say it's so wild how when you open your mind or you get rid of the perspective goes out the window, what you really can experience, what you're capable of. But yeah, I find that like it's different really based on like what people believe. Like if you believe in the 3 laws, threefold, everything's in like that may be very relevant for one but not happen to another.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. And the thing I always point back to is that you never hear of jinn affecting a Catholic family in the middle of freaking Ohio, but you'll have a shit ton of jinn stories coming out of places like Iraq, Iran, and Egypt and the Middle East of jinn possession and whatnot. So that is a good point, and it's an interesting thing that you mentioned that there's realms, because funnily enough, I was playing God of War. I don't know if you guys are gamers. God of War Ragnarok, the Valhalla DLC, and he's like going through Valhalla, and it's like shifting him through different realms to like affect his past or whatever, but I'll digress from that. But the whole concept of realms, like, that's present in Greek mythology, it's present in Norse mythology, it's present in Hinduism as well, the different layers in which beings live in. Like, the lower level is where the asuras reside, which are the quote unquote Hindu demons, and then the higher plane is where the devas live, and then we have our middle plane, Midgard or Earth or whatever you want to call it. So that's an interesting concept. Did you have a follow-up? I didn't mean to cut you
Oh
off.
no, you're okay. It's funny too, because like I've actually, with a lot of cases too, I have found like how I actually experienced a djinn in my parents' house. It can come from DNA too. It doesn't even have to stay in this. I've actually, which when you were earlier when you mentioned the Bronx and everything like that and Queens, I've studied a demonologist who I'm actually friends with on Facebook. He works with Ed and Lorraine Warren. He's really really good. Ralph Sarchi, who is also a cop, um, and a demonologist, really experience a lot of things too. And I recommend him highly if you ever wanted to read up. I wonder if he would ever do a podcast with you. Random, but
Yeah, that would be awesome. Like, you can ask him if you talk to him.
I'm sure he'd be willing. I feel like he's willing to talk to people. He's pretty big. I don't know though. But I feel like you should definitely add him on Facebook. But he definitely, I think he goes over a lot of like debunking and very like, okay, like, because, he's got that cop mentality, but he's also a demonologist. So there's a lot of logic mixed with.
Right. And one question that I have for you, and Dean has had to pull me back. I think you know where we're going with this, Dean, where it's like, you're like, dude, calm down. We're going to lose people. Tarot cards and Ouija boards. And my personal gripe is you'll have these folks that go through some, I don't know, life change, some sort of crisis, and then they start blaming Mercury's in Gatorade. That's why I'm miserable. And then they start pulling tarot cards, and you're on TikTok, so I'm sure you've seen them. They're a dime a dozen. They're like, if you came across this, because this card is for you. Like, I'm just really skeptical on the people that
I have
just,
to disagree
okay, please, by all means,
respectfully
please,
because
please, go ahead.
as a psychic medium, if you are pulling cards for a specific person, why can't you pull cards for the collective? So
Interesting.
I think it depends on where you I think it depends on intention.
Okay. Yeah.
So I've done card pulls where it makes sense to everyone in the room, but then I can do individual card pulls and you guys could get the same cards, but it'll mean something different. Though I'm not a big tarot person anymore. I do oracle more because I don't like to know the meanings of the cards.
Okay. Okay.
I go
Yeah.
off of intuition and just look at, whatever's on the card and just
Yeah.
go.
And I was more so referencing people that I know that I've seen on social media that have never done anything with this, are not psychic. They don't have any of these abilities, but they
Yeah.
just pick it up as a fad.
Yes, I see that a lot. And, I never mean to.
So that's what I was kind of getting at. Not
No,
like
I
legitimate people.
agree. I agree though, because and I never want to come across like I'm downing other people in this field because I always say if this is what you're drawn to, if this is your calling, go for it. But people don't realize that tarot, oracle, Ouija's, it's all tools of divination. If you don't have that discernment, anybody can practice card meanings and know what that card means and pull cards for somebody. But to intuitively read it and go off of that without knowing what the card means, I think is very, very different. And I don't feel that this is something that everyone should just be doing for a trend, because if you interact with the wrong energy and you don't know it, what are you doing then? Who are you gonna call? Because Ghostbusters, I don't know.
We got to get Dan
Ghostbusters.
Aykroyd on
Like-
here. I swear to God.
I know we really do, but I'm glad you gave insight to that. That people that actually know what they're doing can draw for the collective. That
Yeah.
see that I just learned something new. So
I do believe your family members that do I bet they could. I truly do. I'm sure it's just something that they haven't tried yet, because there's always, and I always say we're always learning. Like, I may have years under my belt. That doesn't mean anything. We're always learning. So it really just, whatever you set your mind to and your intentions to, so long as you're protecting your energy, you're grounded, and you have that discernment, I don't think there's any limit as to.
the other question that I have for you is, within like certain biblical texts, they greatly look down upon people with your capabilities. What is your rebuttal to that?
I hate to say this, but I think that's the Christian stuff. That's the organized Christian stuff and not original Catholic, because when you go, and like, I'm not huge,
Like, even in the Old Testament, like,
yeah,
which is the Hebrew Bible, they do. I think there was the oh crap, what is it? I think it's Saul went to go talk to a medium or a psychic to talk to the spirit of Samuel to get advice before battle. And they kind of use that as a thing, like, okay, don't go to these people because they're going to conjure up something that's going to take the form of
yes.
what you expect.
And I
And
believe,
therefore,
yeah, and like, I'm pretty sure Jesus, he was said to be like a healer and do all these things, and that so many feared him for that. what better than to write a book saying, "Don't do this. This is terrible."
In my opinion, it's a way of saying that, like, no regular human can have the power of God, in a sense, you know.
I think it's trying to shut down abilities and like so that because you know what people don't know they fear.
Do you have anything else, Dean, before I ask my final question?
No, that's really intriguing stuff. I do think the biblical stuff is important to consider, and I do tend to err on the side of there are a lot of things that organized religion has done over the ages, not just Catholicism, but every single religion that's organized has. There's always been leaders or sub leaders who have tried to alter things or say or preach certain things that lost the original meaning or blurred it out or something like that. So yeah, I think I'm with you there. Let's move on to the last question then.
Yeah, and the final question for tonight, which I want to thank you both for way too much of your time. We've been going at this for quite a while, and we both really appreciate it. What is your perspective on people that say they're believers in God and, the spiritual realm, and they're religious and whatnot, whether it be, they're Jewish, Muslim, pagan, Norse, Greek mythology, and they refuse to acknowledge that the preternatural exists and that ghosts exist and spirits exist?
I get a lot of people like that actually. I'm sure you saw on my live. I get that daily. And I always say, you know what? People are going to react off of information given and consciousness at the time. If you don't want to pick up your phone and Google what the CIA has released, that's on you. And you have a right to your own beliefs. And if you're not ready to look into that, it may be an uncomfortability or you're not ready. It might just not be. So I respect people that are like, I'm not going to be going shoving it down people's throat.
It's like, I'll leave you alone. Leave me alone.
Yeah.
Right.
Like, but I also say, if you're skeptical but you want to hang around because you're curious, that's respectable. But there needs to be a mutual respect. So I love dealing with skeptics so long as they're not disrespectful. Because I feel like people deserve the opportunity to have that experience.
Like an open-minded skeptic's cool.
An
But when you got
open-minded skeptic.
A closed-minded one, get out of here.
Yeah,
My grandma, she's an enigma. I don't know what the
She's
hell her
pretty
problem is.
close-minded, but she has acknowledged my abilities more than once. She's like, if what'd she say? If she ever saw some stuff, she'd like have to rethink her religion.
She's too old to change her beliefs. There's no point at this moment.
She's atheist, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I used to be an atheist until I saw my aunt get tossed into a closet door. But Dean, any final thoughts before we wrap up today?
No, this has been so great, and thank you for your time. We should do this again because this is probably one of the best guests or people having on the show we've had. Please feel free to no, seriously, I'm dead serious. Like you guys, we've had ones where like it's so hard to reach and like you're scraping and then you finally catch a little bit, but this one was so easy. From the first time I chimed in on the phone and was listening, I had question, like insight. So this was a really great one, and like can't wait to have you back and let us know. Please tell everybody where they could find you.
So you can find S.A.W Paranormal on YouTube, on Instagram, on Facebook. You can find my psychic page, Alex Marie Gassia, on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube. But yeah, you just look us up and we're on somewhere.
Yeah, pretty much.
Again, Alex, Shane, thank you both so much for your time tonight on a Friday night. We really appreciate it. And we mean this wholeheartedly. You've been one of the best guests. You both have been one of the best guests that we've had on this show. And we would love to have you back on for more conversation on the psychic medium world and demons and stuff like that. Because I have a laundry list of questions in my head. I'm sure Dean does as well, but we've been at this for about 2 hours and we want to be respectful of your time. Again, we thank you both for joining us. And folks, you heard them plug. Go give them a follow. And Alex, I know that you're like live on TikTok in the mornings usually during the week. Like her TikTok lives are awesome. So again, folks, if you enjoyed today's show, give them a follow. And always remember, rag on the hag.
You know, it's so funny. We have been saying that for so long, and the episode that referenced that was so long ago. I feel like we're gonna have to like eventually explain to people who are coming in like what that means. We'll do that next time. Okay, rag on the hag.
Thanks for tuning into today's episode of The Wandering Road. You can find us on Apple, Google, Spotify, and most podcast platforms. Be sure to subscribe and share. Also, don't forget to give a follow on Instagram at twroadpodcast and follow my TikTok at twrpodcast. Take care, and I'll catch you on the next one.